morning to everybody. Sorry for being a little late. We will continue with our discussion on Buddhist ethics. In fact, today I am going to discuss something with which you are more familiar. Basically, Sila in Buddhism. Up to this point, we looked at different aspects of Buddhist ethics, some basic preliminary issues like whether Buddhist ethics is deterministic, whether it is it involves any form of determinism, theistic determinism or karma determinism and things like that. Now, when we discuss ethics, basically what is good and bad and right and wrong and the good behavior, in Buddhism, Sila is one very important thing. But let me explain to you how Sila becomes a major part of Buddhist ethics. When we discuss ethics in general, we are discussing what is good, what is most desirable for basically human beings, what is most desirable for all beings according to Buddhism. We know that in Buddhism we are not only looking at human beings, we are looking at all beings, right? Sabbe satta, all beings. So ethics basically is concerned about what is good. Now, in a narrow sense, what is good is understood to be what is good for human beings. But Buddhism looks, of course, at human beings and also nature. Nature is basically living beings like animals, birds, reptiles and so on. And also nature in the sense of natural objects, rivers, forests, trees, plants and that aspect. Animate and inanimate aspects of nature. Now this Buddhist aspect is quite in agreement with modern attitude. We know that for some time people were looking at only at human beings. If something is good for human beings, that's supposed to be good. But today we look at also environment. So things have to be environment friendly. Things have to be not destructive to environment. This attitude is not something new to Buddhism. This attitude has been in Buddhism. But for the modern world, particularly the Western thinking, this inclusion of nature, birds and beasts and reptiles and trees and plants, rivers and all these things is something new. Okay? Now today modern science also upholds the view that nature is interconnected. So we as human beings, we can't be living just by ourselves. We need trees and plants. We need rivers and the ocean. We need mountains. Okay? So therefore we need to be taking care of them. So in that sense, this inclusiveness is something quite new to the modern world and modern thinking, but it is not new to Buddhist thinking. It has been there from Buddhism from the very beginning. When in the Karnimetta Sutta, Buddha says, Sabbe satta bhavantu sukhitatta. Sabbe satta, all beings, all living beings. Now in religious systems like Jainism, trees and plants were included among living beings. Buddhism doesn't consider trees and plants as living being like human being. Buddhism doesn't think that trees and plants are conscious. But on the other hand, Buddhism also admits the dependently existing nature of all phenomena. Okay? So in that sense, we can say that nature has been a part of that. So what is good in a very general sense? Now, where does Sila come from? In fact, when we define what is good, there are many things that we can consider to be good. And ultimately, there is something ultimately good. Now, according to Buddhism, what is ultimately good is nirvana, right? What is ultimately good is nirvana. And then before nirvana, of course, there are many other things that are good for human beings. Okay? So in Buddhist way of life, we know that what we are trying to do is achieve the ultimate good. So ultimate good is nirvana, and then there are other things before attaining nirvana. Basically in the Buddhist concept, we are talking about two things. We are talking about Sagga and also Mokkha. Now Sagga is heaven. Mokkha is liberation. And Sagga is spoken in Buddhism quite in highly. And also the Punya Kamma, meritorious deeds we are cultivating is to attain Sagga. But we know that Sagga is not the end. Then after that we have Mokkha. Particularly when we look at the monastic society and lay society, Buddha talks about Gihi Sukha and Pabbajita Sukha. Now the happiness is the highest thing we try to achieve. When we attain Nirvana, also Nibbana is Nibbana Paramang Sukhang. Nirvana is the highest happiness, right? So we can say that happiness in the Sagga and also happiness in the Mokkha. So highest happiness. So the highest goal, Nirvana, has the highest happiness. However, before the Nirvanic happiness, we have other forms of happiness. Here we have heaven as the happy state where people like to attain. Now Buddhism makes a distinction between ordinary lay people and also monastic community, monks and nuns. For ordinary lay people, their main purpose is, immediate goal is to be born in the heaven. But that is not the complete end according to Buddhism. Even the lay people, although their immediate goal is to attain heaven, to be born in heaven, they ultimately want to realize Nirvana. The difference is, for the monastic community, they follow a direct path. For the lay community, they follow somewhat of a roundabout path. But of course, both lay people and the monastic people, monastic group, are aiming at this highest good. Okay. Now, when we look at this highest good, particularly the heaven and the liberation, we practice certain things. For example, we practice generosity, dana, in order to attain heaven. However, our dana becomes somewhat different when we are aiming at liberation. It is like two different things. We can say dana, and then we can say parichaga. Now when we say dana and when we say parichaga, basically it's the same thing. But at the same time there is an important difference here. What is the difference between dana and parichaga? Do you see any difference here? Do you see some kind of difference in dana and parichaga? Now when we say dana, we give something. But in the dana, whenever we give something, we give away something, but we expect something in return. It's like this, you know, we buy a gift for somebody on the birthday. And then when we give that gift, we expect that person to say to us, thank you, appreciate it, acknowledge it. But if the person who is receiving it just receives it without any expression, then we become unhappy. Because we at least want that person to thank us, that person to appreciate what we did, right? And then when we give dana, people hope to acquire merit and to be born in the heaven. You know, as Buddhist monks, you know that even when people do meritorious deeds, they want you to acknowledge it. They want you to put it on a board. They want you to say it in public. Okay? People want recognition. Now that is dana, because by dana you expect something. Finally, they want to be born in the heaven. However, parichaga, the difference is you not only give, but you give up. But when you give up something, you know, there is a very important difference. When you give something, it is one thing. But when you give up, it doesn't really matter who takes it, whether anyone takes it. Simply you give up your ownership to that object. The difference is again, you know, I like a particular monk, I like to give something to only to that monk. There is a story in the Buddhist literature when the Venerable Arahant Mahakassapa was going on Pindapata, certain Upasika was, you know, the supporting Venerable Mahakassapa. She could not distinguish between the Buddha and the Mahakassapa, so mistakenly she offered whatever to the Buddha. And seeing that Venerable Mahakassapa coming behind, she took that and gave it to Venerable Mahakassapa. And Venerable Mahakassapa became very quite concerned about it. Now for that Upasika, she wanted to give only to Mahakassapa, right? Now this is dana. But if it is parichaga, it doesn't really matter. Parichaga means you give up your attachment to something. You give up your ownership. Once you give up your ownership, it doesn't really matter. So parichaga is giving up. So dana is, if dana is giving, parichaga is giving up. So this is the difference between the two. Now I brought this example to show you why we need sila. Now you can see that in order to attain these states, either heaven, we call it sagga, or mokkha, there is a certain way of practicing, certain way of behavior, certain way of life. Okay? Now, important thing is, depending on the goal, our way of behavior becomes different, right? So in order to attain moksha, when we say attain moksha, basically we are trying to attain liberation. Actually this liberation in the Buddha's teaching is described in two important terms. One thing is Visuddhi, the other is Vimukti. So Visuddhi is purification, Vimukti is release, or we can say liberation. Now this final goal is described as Vimukti. Visuddhi. Visuddhi is purification. Now when we say purification, purity, cleanliness also indicates that there are certain things, defiling things, kilesa. We are impure, we become impure, we become polluted. So it is from pollutions that we get rid of the pollutions and that we become Visuddhi. So with Visuddhi, the connecting concept is kilesa, okay. We try to get purification from impurities, defilements, kilesas, which are called basically raga, dosa and moha. So when we refer to moksha as purification, we mean to be cleansing ourselves from defilements. So defilements are, it's like kilesa, okay. And then when we talk about the release, Vimukti is releasing ourselves from something. Now this is basically, we are talking about Sanyojana, or we are talking about Bandhana. There are many similar concepts like Oga, Yoga and so on. So Vimukti, release, liberation indicates that there are Sanyojanas. Sanyojanas are shackles that bind people to the sansaric existence. So you can see that when we describe the nirvana or ultimate attainment through these concepts, Visuddhi and Vimukti, two concepts indicate something psychologically very important. Psychologically very important means when we talk about the kilesas, defilements are in our mind. Raga, dosa, moha are in our mind. So you purify your mind of these defilements, right? And then similarly, when we talk about Sanyojana, shackles or the binding things, bandhana, our mind is shackled or our mind is bound by certain things. We know about Dasa Sanyojana, 10 Sanyojanas. Now mind is tied into these things. So you released your mind from that. So two metaphors actually. One metaphor is the purification. You purify. Mind is impure, so purify the mind. Mind is bound, you release the mind. Mind is not free, but you make the mind free. So these two concepts are in fact very, very important concepts. If you only take the concept of Vimukti, there is an ancient book called Vimukti Magga, right? That was, written by Abhegiriya monk in Sri Lanka. Vimutti Magga, the path of release, path of liberation. And then on the other hand, we have Visuddhi Magga. Visuddhi Magga is one of the biggest, huge works. Now, if you take only one concept, Visuddhi, you can see how much you can study under one concept. Same thing under Vimutti. If you take one concept, because psychologically that is very, very important. It highlights one aspect of human mind when we say Vimutti. Because our mind has to be freed from sanyojanas, and also our mind has to be purified from the defiling factors. Now again, what is the connection of these things to the Sila? Actually, in order to achieve these things, we have to behave in a certain way. Our life has to be lived in a certain way, because defiling factors are raga, dosa, moha. Now, if your way of life is increasing raga, dosa, moha, then you will not be able to attain the final goal. So therefore, your life has to be conducive to reducing raga, dosa, moha, right? So in other words, our way of behavior has to be in accordance with the final goal. Whatever you do should not be against the final goal. For example, raga, dosa, moha are, not good for the final goal. Now, raga means attachment. Okay. Now, in order to reduce attachment, what we do is we give things away. And then finally, as I explained to you earlier, only giving is not enough. You have to give up. Right? You have to give up. But giving up is the advanced stage. Giving is in a way very preliminary. We give things. But when we give things, we expect something back. We accept merit. We expect some kind of thank you, appreciation from somebody. But when you give up, it doesn't really matter whether a person appreciates it or not. It doesn't matter whether anybody uses it or not. It doesn't matter to whom it goes. It doesn't matter, because the parichaga, giving up, is to give up from your mind. Okay, that is the idea. So in other words, you have to live a life in such a way that your purification process is increased. Your emancipatory or release process is also increased. So this is the whole idea of, now we go to the Sila. In other words, in brief, what I am trying to tell you is that our life has to be in accordance with our final goal. Okay, that is what ultimately Sila is for. Now in other words, in Buddhist ethics, when we talk about the highest good, nirvana, and then in order to realize that highest good, we have to look at what is the best behavior for that. So Sila is connected with the highest good. Behavior is connected with the highest good. I will give you an example. It is something like when you are not in good health, you have to take medicine, right? But your medicine is to cure your particular illness. Yeah? So if you have certain illness, you take some type of medicine. But if you do not take that medicine, of course your illness will not be cured. So the medicine has to be according to the illness. Now same thing in the samsara, we can say all of us are sick people. All of us are sick. We are sick with raga, we are sick with dosa, we are sick with moha, and many other things. Now, if that is the case, then our medicine has to be in order to cure that sickness, okay. You know, this medical metaphor is something very, very important in the teaching of the Buddha. We know that sometimes Buddha has been described as Sallakatto Anuttaro, incomparable surgeon. Buddha has been described. Buddha has been described as a medical doctor. In the Buddhist art, there is a form of Buddha statue in which Buddha holds medicine. Okay. So, this medicine, Dhamma as the medicine, Buddha as the physician is very well known in the world. Okay. Not only in the Theravada tradition, in the Mahayana and Vajrayana and other traditions, you know, this metaphor of the Buddha as the physician and the Dhamma as the medicine. So, the Dhamma is the medicine for some kind of illness. Now, even if you take the Four Noble Truths, actually Four Noble Truths, if you look at the scheme, the structure of the Four Noble Truths, you can see that the structure is like the you know, like a medical structure. Dukkha means illness. Samudaya means the cause of illness. And the Nirodha means the health. Magga means the medicine, you know, how to achieve the. So, you know, this idea is very popular in the Buddhist literature. Now again, the idea is that if you are not well, then you take medicine in order to cure that. So, you identify what is wrong with you, what is the disease, and then we follow a course of medicine. Now, similar thing is actually Sila Samadhi Panya, Tisso Sikha, where Sila is the most important first aspect of Sila as the first aspect in the threefold training, Tisso Sikha. So, Sila has to be in accordance with the final goal. If you are trying to attain Sagga, then there is a certain way of behavior. If you are trying to attain Mokkha, there is a certain way of behavior. Actually, these two ways of behavior are not separate or contradictory, but you know, two different degrees. As ordinary people, when we practice dana, of course when we practice dana, we reduce our desire, but at the same time we expect something. So, desire is not completely gone, but we are pushing ourselves in that direction. However, when it comes to Mokkha liberation, we know that we are in a total different degree of practice, where we give up things, give up the desire for things. This whole concept of abhinikramana, abhinishkramana in Sanskrit, you leave behind things and go. You don't look back. You leave behind. So that sense of thing is, you know, something much higher. Okay, we will look at Sila. Now, Sila is basically the behavior appropriate to the ultimate goal. So, we can say that Sila equals behavior appropriate to the final goal. So, now when we look at the monastic Sila or lay people's Sila, we must be able to see that this particular Sila is actually the appropriate behavior to the final realization of the final goal. Okay. So, the Sila as the first aspect in the threefold training, Tisso Sikha. Now, again it is very important to see that not only Sila, Samadhi, Panya are described in the Dhamma as Tisso Sikha. When you say Sikha, Sikha means training. training yourself to do something. So in that sense, not only Sila, even Samadhi and the Panya are part of the Sikha. Okay? Sikha means you're training yourself. So the beginning point is Sila. The monastic Sila is described in the Samanya Phala Sutta in the following manner. Evang pabbajito samano patimokha sangvara sanguto viharati achara gochara sampanno anumattesu vajjesu bhayadassavi samadaya sikkati sikkhapadesu kaya kamma vache kammena samannagato kusalena parisuddha jivo sila sampanno indriyesu guttadwaro sati sampajanyena samannagato santuttho. Now this is how the monastic Sila is described in the Samanya Phala Sutta. Now when we say Sila, the Sila is basically the behavior. Sila is the character. Sila is the nature. It has many different meanings. Okay, so Sila basically means one's behavior, one's way of life, nature. In order to understand the meaning of this word, think about some uses like Nidda Sili, Sabha Sili. Now what is the Sili there? It comes from Sila. Nidda Sili means one who is prone to sleeping. Sila, Sili. Sabha Sili. So that is the behavior. So Nidda Sila means one who is sleeping. Sleeping as the practice or way of life. Sabha Sili, association with people, assembling with people as the nature. So the Sila basically means your behavior, your practice, your nature, way of life. Okay? So in that sense, Sila is a very broad term in Buddhism. And it talks about Gihi Sila, Pabbajita Sila, the Sila for the lay people and also Sila for the monastic community. Now for the monastic community, you can see that Sila forms the basis. Now in the Samanya Phala Sutta, Buddha refers to, once you become a Pabbajit, evam Pabbajito samano, patimokha sangvara sanguto viharati. You restrain yourself according to patimokha. You restrain yourself according to patimokha. This word patimokha is again not easy term. Commentary gives different meanings per ati, pamokha and so on. But actually the original meaning of patimokha, patimokha is something related to purging. You purge yourself. You release all the bad things from your system. It's a medical term actually. It's a medical term. Now in the physical medicine, we take sometimes medicine in order to purge our system, clean our system. So patimokha comes from that medicinal meaning basically. Of course, when you look at the word, you can split into pa, ati, pa, mokha and so on. But ultimately, mokha means release, letting go. Okay? So it is in that sense basically a medical term actually. But anyhow, patimokha means the basic monastic vinaya. So you behave, you restrain yourself according to the basic monastic vinaya. Patimokha sangvara sanguto viharati. Achara gochara sampanno. Achara gochara sampanno. Achara means behavior. How to walk, how to sit, how to talk, how to wear your dress, how to eat, how to sleep. All things are achara, are achara, charati, charati, it comes from charati. And gochara sampanno, gochara, achara, gochara sampanno. What is gochara? What is the meaning of gochara? What is go? Cattle, right? Gochara? Charati. Charati means go around. So the gochara means, actually the original meaning of the word is where the cattle roam, cattle go around. Now this again, this is a metaphorical thing. Like, you know, the cow herd takes his herd to the forest. But you know, in the forest, the group of cows, they go to certain extent, but they don't go beyond that. If the cows go beyond that, then they become prey to you know, the leopards, lions, and you know, so on. So they are being killed. So therefore, gochara means the limit of behavior. So the cow herd always looks around and he sees his cows. If some cow goes beyond his vision, then that cow is in trouble. So the cows have to know where to go and where not to go. Now gochara in that sense is a very important concept. It tells us the limit of our behavior. You remember in the, I think in the Maha Sihanada Sutta, Buddha says, Charata bhikkhave sake gochare sake pettike visaye. Pettika visaya. Pettika means belonging to the father. Pettika visaya means the range belonging to the father. Buddha says to his pupils, don't go beyond the range of your father. If you go beyond the range of your father, you are in trouble. But so long as you roam around within the range of your father, sake pettike visaye, gochare charata. You know, so this concept of gochara basically comes from agricultural society, where people had ancient India, you know, where people had cattle as one of the very important source of income and the richness. Sanyutta Nikaya says, Natti go samitang dhanang. So the the cattle is a very, very important source of income for people, producing milk products. So the concept of gochara comes, gochara means the range, the limit of your behavior. So the basic meaning is connected to the life of the cattle, but the metaphorical meaning of the word gochara is the range of the behavior, the limit of the behavior, what you can do and what you cannot do, okay? So when the sutta says, in Patimokka Sangvara Sanguto Viharati, Achara Gochara Sampanno. So Achara means the basic behavior, Gochara means the limit of your behavior. Anumattesu Vajjesu Bhayadasavi, you know that, you see a danger in even the smallest thing. Samadaya Sikkati Sikkhapadesu, you Sikkhapada, you observe the precepts. Now, you know, there's an important difference between these two terms. We say Sikkha and Sikkhapada. When we say Tisso Sikkha, Sikkha basically means the training, the following a particular practice, Sikkha. What is Sikkhapada? What is the difference between Sikha and Sikkhapada? Now when we say Sikkhapadang Samadhiyami, Sikkhapada means rule. Sikha basically means the training, okay? Now when we say Tisso Sikha, it doesn't mean the rules. But when we say Patimokha Sila, Patimokha Sangvara Sila, in the Patimokha there are rules. 220 for the monks and then 200, how much for the nuns? Yeah. 200, not 20 plus Adhikarana Samata is not really the Sila Venerable. Actually the exact number of Sikkhapadas are 220. Satta Adhikarana Samata are not Sila. Adhikarana Samatas are the way of resolving the conflicts. So sometimes people put all Sila as 227, but that's not correct, okay? The more correct thing is 220 plus 7 Adhikarana Samatas. Well, Aniyata forms a part of Sila, definitely. But Adhikarana Samata means the way of resolving the conflicts. When there is some trouble, how to resolve that. But that is not really the Sikkhapada. Sikkhapada means rule. If you violate the Sikkhapada, you are punished. But Sikha is different. Sikha is training. So Sila, Samadhi, Panya is Sikha. But when you say Sikkhapada, particular rule. So if you violate a particular rule, then you get a punishment for that. So that is the difference between Sikha and Sikkhapada. Okay, so Sikha is a broader term where we talk about all Sila, Samadhi, Panya. So here we have Anumattesu, Vajjesu, Bhayadasavi, Samadhaya Sikkati, Sikkhapadesu, Kaya Kamma, Vachi Kammena, Samannagato, Kusalena. Kusalena, Kaya Kamma, Vachi Kammena, Samannagato. You have your Kaya Kamma, physical actions, and Vachi Kamma, verbal actions, Kusala. They are skillful physical and verbal behavior. Samannagato Kusalena, Parisuddha Ajivo. Now, they are of course Parisuddha Ajiva, but before that, Kaya Kamma, Vachi Kamma and Samannagato Kusalena. So, Sila basically deals with Kaya Kamma and Vachi Kamma. Particularly, the reason is that because when we are dealing with Sikkhapada, what is going on in your mind is something very personal. But what is important is your physical and verbal behavior, what you do. So, this Sila has a very important aspect of what we do, not what we think really. But it's very interesting, without thinking you can't do things. But what is important is what the outside world see you do your physical body and what you do with your words. So, Kaya Kamma, Vachi Kamma is a major aspect of Sila. Although without the involvement of mind, we can't behave. Although we can't behave without mind, but what captures in the Sila is what you do. Now, for example, you may be feeling to steal something that is in the mind. But if you did not really steal it, took it and went away, then you have not committed the Kaya Kamma. You see the situation? But in your mind, you have thought about it. But simply thinking about is at one level. But having thought about it, you have to do it. You think you should steal this, but it's only a manokamma. But you really take it and put it in, then it becomes stealing, right? So the Kaya Kamma and Vachi Kamma. Sometimes you feel like saying something very nasty to somebody, but you don't say it. So it remains only a manokamma. So the basically Sila and the Vinaya is basically for the Kaya Kamma and Vachi Kamma. In fact, in the Vinaya, in the entire Patimokha Vinaya, there are no rules for the mind, right? No rules for the mind.
Yeah.
Because although everything happens in the mind, although mano pubbangama dhamma, everything is the mind, but sila, patimokha samvara sila deals with only visible things. Okay, only things you do with your words or with your physical body. So that's why kaya kammena, vachi kammena, samannagato kusalena, parisuddha ajivo, your way of life has to be pure, sila sampanno, indriya suguttadvaro, indriya sangvara, sati sampajanyena samannagato, and then santutto. You also have to be happy with whatever you get. Now you see that this captures the entire, not only sila in the narrow sense, but entire the monastic behavior. Now later when we discuss the sila based on Visuddhimagga, you will see that in the Buddhist tradition we have 4 different types of sila. Patimokha Sangvara Sila, Indriya Sangvara Sila, Ajiva Parisuddha Sila, and so on. Actually, all these 4 are seen in here. You see the Patimokha Sangvara Sila, Indriya Sangvara Sila, Ajiva Parisuddha Sila, what is the other one? Okay. So, all these sila you can be seen in here. In this analysis, sila has been described in a broader manner, including all aspects of monastic life. Now the point I want to make in this is this. If you look at the monastic life, if you look at the sila in the monastic life, you can see that each and every sila is ultimately becomes relevant to the final goal. So if you want to understand why do you do this, you have to think about the final goal. Now for example, it says Nacha Gita Vadita Visuka Dasana, so you have to get rid of these things. But why? Now in order to answer that question, why do you have to do that? Why do you have to really be away from these things? Because ultimately you have to look at the nature of the nirvana. So Nacha Gita Vadita Visuka Dasana will increase your desire. But if you want to live a life, not increase in desire, but decrease in desire. So, you follow that. So, you look at each and every precept, Sikkhapada, if you want to understand why, what is the meaning of this, why do you have to do it, then you have to look at the final goal. That is why the highest good, final goal, and the way of life support in that final goal. Okay. That is the whole meaning of sila. Okay. Now all these precepts, 220 or 314, ultimately become meaningful in this context. But basically the whole idea is to refrain from all the bad things. Sabba papassa akarana. Very briefly. However, when you look at the list of precepts, you see Sabba Papa there. But Buddha simply says Sabba Papa Sakarana, Kusalasa Upasampada, then you do the right thing, good things. So refraining from bad things and doing the good things, these are basically the 2 things that are considered. So for that matter here you can see Sila basically as defined in the sense of monastic sila, various different aspects of monastic sila, conducive to the final goal in the Buddhist monastic life. Now the 5 precepts are given as the householder's gahatta. This sila too involves both the practice and the refrain virati. In the Eightfold Path, the Aryathangika Magga sila is included in right word, right action, and right livelihood. According to the Rathavinita Sutta of the Majjhima Nikaya, sila is one of the 7 vehicles that lead to the practitioner to the goal of religious life. Now here you can see, first I discussed briefly with you monastic sila. The 5 precepts are given as the householder's gahatta sila. This sila too involves both practice and the refrain. Samadhana and virati. Now this aspect is something very important when you look at samadhana aspect and the virati aspect. In fact, I did not put it in here, but briefly I can show you this virati and samadhana aspect of sila. For example, look at this. This comes in the Samanya Pala Sutta. Kathancha Maharaja Bhikkhu Sila Sampanno Hoti. Ida Maharaja Bhikkhu Panatipatang Pahaya Panatipata Pativirato Hoti. Nihita Dando, Nihita Sattho, Lajji, Dayapanno, Sabba Pana Bhuta Hitanukampi Viharati. Now look at that thing. Basically we say Panatipata Veramani. Refrain from killing, taking life. But look at here, it's been described as Panatipatam Pahaya, Panatipata Pativirato Viharati. So that is the virati. And then Nihita Sattho, Nihita Dando, Nihita Sattho. Nihita Danda, you keep aside the stick, Danda. You use a cane or stick to, punish people. Nihita Dando, Nihita Sattho. Sattha means weapon. You keep the weapon away. Lajji. Dayapanno. Lajji. You are ashamed of doing something bad. Dayapanno. You are with daya. Daya means affection. Sabba Pana Bhuta Hitanukampi Viharati. You live your life Sabba Pana Bhuta. Sabba Pana Bhuta means all the living beings. We can say animate and inanimate, all the living beings. Sabba Pana Bhuta Hitanukampi Viharati. So here you can see both virati and samadhana. Okay. So the sila sometimes in the Buddhist context is understood only as refraining from bad things. No, that is only one aspect. You refrain from bad things, but at the same time you do what is opposite to it. So the killing, Panatipata Pativirato Hoti. However, the positive aspect of is you pay respect, you show love towards all living beings. That is a part of Panatipata. We can't simply think that no, I am not killing anybody. But that's true. But at the same time, you have to check whether you are really kind to people, whether you are nice to people. Okay? So it is not only refrain from not killing. Okay, you are not killing because somebody else is killing for us, so no problem. But you really have to see whether you are Sabba Pana Bhuta Hitanukampi. So these both aspects, virati and the refraining and the samadhana. Look at this. Adinnādanang pahaya adinnādāna pativirato hoti. And then you have dinnādāyi, dinnapaටිkanki, athenena, suchibhūtena, attana viharati. That's very, very interesting and important. Adinnādanang pahaya adinnādāna pativirato hoti. Now adinnādana means stealing, right? But look at the word adinna adana. What is the meaning of the word? Simply we say adinnādana means stealing. But look at the word adinna adana. Adana means taking. Dana means giving. Adana means taking. Adinna adana. You take something not given to you. Something doesn't belong to you. That is adinnādana. Now when we interpret the second precept in that manner, you can see that it is not only stealing somebody's things, it can be anything that is not belonging to you. Adinna, that is not given to you. So you can't take that doesn't belong to you. Maybe not only things, even things like good name, You don't do something good, but somebody praises you for doing it, but you didn't do it. So you does not deserve it, right? So adinna adana has a broad meaning. Something that is not lawfully, legally, justifiably given to you. You should not take. Sometimes you can find something, lying there, but you don't take it because that is adinna adana. It was not given to you. It belongs to somebody else. Maybe somebody forgot it. So you try to do the appropriate thing there, but not to take it. So adinna dana pativirato hoti. And then look at it further. Dinna dai, you take only what is given to you. Dinna dai. Dinna patikanki, you expect only what is given to you. Athenena suchibhutena attana viharati. You live with your purified personality. Suchibhutena attana. Suchibhutena attana. Suchi means pure. So your behavior, your life is pure. You don't take anything that doesn't belong to you. I think you know this. You can look at this in the Samanya Pada Sutta. I am not going to go into details. This is in a way pretty simple, but at the same time, this is very important to look at the positive aspect of the sila, because the good behavior is not only refraining from bad, also doing something good. I say this sometimes for Buddhism, especially for Theravada Buddhism, there is a criticism. That criticism is that Theravada Buddhists are only try to do things in the mind. They don't do really things, go out and do that. Now, this is something very important for us to think. Now, when we say the second one, even the first one, nihita satto, nihita dando, and then dinna dai, dinna patikanki, athenena suchibhutena attana viharati. So not only you don't steal other people's things, you protect other people's things. Okay? So both are part of that same thing. Not only you don't kill, you really preserve the life. So this positive aspect, sila is not complete without that. Now metta, we think that we can do metta like this. Of course you can do metta like that, but that is not the complete metta. Complete metta, you have to go out and help some people. Okay? You can't just be sitting cross-legged and practice metta. That is only one aspect of metta. But also at the same time, it is very important for us to do something. Help some people. Okay? So the metta has this practical aspect. You know the Buddha's story, when the Buddha saw this Putigatta Tissa. What did the Buddha do? Buddha got water and this thing, and Buddha washed this person, and that's what the Buddha did. But sometimes particularly Buddhist monks think that it is not good for their samvara. No, that's nothing like that. You can go to hospital and wash the hospital. Okay? You can do those things. Buddha did that, right? Buddha showed it. So Venerables, this whole aspect of virati and samadhana, I am not going to Abrahmacharyam pahaya brahmachari hoti, arachari virato brahmacharya, metuna gama dhamma, musavadam pahaya musavada pati virato. So all these precepts, you can see that now if you look at third precept about brahmachari, so you refrain from the bad way of life. But when it comes to the lay people, of course, third precept is kami sumichachara veramani. The wrong behavior. But then in the sila, we have this aspect where not only you observe the sila, you also practice the positive aspect of that. So not only you live within your family life, but also you encourage, like other people to be like that. So in that manner, we have different aspects of sila. In the Buddhist tradition, we have this concept of Trikoti Parishuddha not only for the meat. We also have Trikoti Parishuddha for the sila. Trikoti Parishuddha means you refrain from the bad thing. You encourage people to do good things. And also you praise, you say the good things about the people who do these things. Okay? So you refrain from the bad things, you do the opposite good thing, and you get other people also to follow that. That is the Trikoti Parishuddha of the sila. So this concept of Trikoti Parishuddha in Pali is not only for meat, it also for the sila. Okay? Sila has to be practiced in 3 different levels. One is to refrain from the bad thing, the second is to do the positive good side of that, and the third is to encourage people, others to behave in that manner. So you have third precept Abrahmacharya for the monastic community, that is basically refrain from it, but for the lay community, it has these 3 aspects. And also Musavada. You refrain from telling lies, then you tell the truth. Musavadam pahaya, musavada pativirato, sacchavadi, saccasandho, tetho, pachayiko, avisangvadako lokassa. So sacchavadi, so you tell the truth and you do not avisangvadako lokassa, you don't contradict what you do and what you say. So this aspect of the virati and samadhana in the sila, I am not going to go into all the details. I would like you to read Samanyapala Sutta. Actually the very first 10 suttas on the Digha Nikaya, any sutta you can read, but basically read the Samanyapala Sutta and see these two different aspects of that. Now when it comes to the Eightfold Path, we have Aryathangika Magga, sila included in the right word, Samma Vacha, right action, Samma Kammanta, and right livelihood, Samma Ajiva. So these 3 aspects are connected particularly to the sila. However, in the broad sense of behavior, in the Aryathangika Magga, you have not only sila, you have samadhi and also panya. Okay? Now, as we saw at the very beginning of discussion, sila, samadhi, panya constitute the Sikha, training in the Buddhist tradition. Okay? So in that sense, in that broad sense, you can take all Sila, Samadhi, Panya as constituting the right behavior. But in a somewhat narrow sense, you have Samma Vacha, Samma Kammanta and Samma Ajiva, right livelihood. Again, I am not going to describe those things because you know them. And then according to the Rathavinita Sutta of the Madhyama Nikaya, sila is one of the 7 vehicles that lead to the practitioner to the goal of religious life. This simile of Rathavinita is very important, where I think this discussion takes place between 2 venerable monks, and then one asks why someone observes sila. The final goal is described in this sutta as Anupada Parinibbana. Okay? The question is, Anupada Parinibbana is attaining parinirvana without any attachment. Anupada Parinibbana. The question is, you take Sattva Visuddhi, Sila Visuddhi, Chitta Visuddhi, Ditta Visuddhi and so on. So the question is whether any one of these Visuddhis would lead to the Anupada Parinibbana. But answer is no. If you take Sila, Sila doesn't directly lead to the Anupada Parinibbana. If you take Chitta Visuddhi, Ditti Visuddhi, none of these things would lead one to the Anupada Parinibbana directly. Then what is the connection? Now the connection is the Ratha Vinita. The simile given is in the ancient days, you know, if the king wanted to send a messenger to a faraway city, what will happen is, you know, king will use 7 vehicles. So the one vehicle, you know, the one horse carriage was very fast, and to the next one. So it is the relay of, you know, the horse carriages. So ultimately the 7th horse carriage reaches the destination. But of course the 7th carriage reached the destination with the help of 6 other things, right? So you can't say that any one horse carriage did the traveling. All 7 did one after the other. All 7 are connected with. So this is the simile in the Ratha Vinita Sutta. So what is said is actually in the Ratha Vinita Sutta you have Sila, so leading to Chitta Visuddhi, leading to Ditti Visuddhi and so on it goes, and ultimately you have Anupada Parinibbana. So Sila to this and, you know, in this manner. So Sila is connected to this, and then finally. You know, the most important thing is what is given in here is without Sila you cannot do. Without Sila you can't start with your journey towards Anupada Parinibbana. So Sila is one of the 7 vehicles that lead to the practitioner to the goal of religious life. So all these 7 are interconnected, one is connected to the other. So finally with all 7 things one is led to the final goal. However, we have to understand that in this simile there is it could be misunderstood. So you may think that, okay, Sila, the first vehicle, you go by that 10, give up that vehicle, go to the next one, give up that vehicle, go to the next one. Actually this vehicle simile could be misunderstood. Although vehicle is given up in the actual traveling, in the Buddhist practice, Sila is not given up. When you go to Chitta, you take your Sila to the Chitta. And when you Ditti Visuddhi, you take both to the Ditti Visuddhi. Okay? So, in other words, you take Sila Samadhi Panya. Sila Samadhi Panya is Sila, the beginning point, Samadhi is the middle point, the Panya is the concluding point. However, Sila is not given up. Okay? You have something like this. You have Sila is the number 1, number 2 is Sila plus Samadhi, I'm sorry. Number 3 is Sila, Samadhi plus so here you see Sila, Sila plus Samadhi, Sila plus Samadhi plus Panya. Now this is basically, you know, how it goes. So it is wrong to believe that, you know, you can give up Sila. No, you don't give up Sila, you take Sila to Samadhi. So at the second stage you are with both Sila and Samadhi. In the third stage you are Sila, Samadhi and Panya, all 3 are there. So this is basically the idea in the Buddhist tradition. You use Sila as the starting point and then you carry it on. Okay? So you can't say that an Arahant is without Sila. Arahant is without Patimokka, no. the bhikkhu, whether it is arahant or not, has to observe the sila. But for an arahant, what happens is sila is observed naturally. Okay, sila is observed naturally. But basically, there is no state where arahant is without sila or anybody is without sila. Here there is a distinction between sila and the vinaya, but today I am not going to talk about that. I will be talking to you about sila and the vinaya at the next stage. I think basically what I wanted to tell you should be clear. Let me see whether Buddhism makes a distinction between sila and silabbata paramasa, the practice of sila and tenacious grasp of such practices. In a similar manner, there is a distinction between being with sila, silava, and being made of sila, silamayo. Sila in Buddhism provides the basis or the beginning point of religious life. Sometimes it is misunderstood as something to be given up later on the path, in the path. The three aspects of the path are connected. Without sila, one cannot proceed to samadhi, and without both, one cannot proceed to panya. Basically, when we look at these three things, Buddhism makes a distinction between sila and silabbata paramasa. Sila is one thing, silabbata paramasa is, tenacious grasping of sila, certain rites and rituals. Buddha's advice was mainly to follow the precept, but of course not the letter of the precept, but the meaning of the precept, okay? That's very important, because sometimes we are more concerned about the letter of the precept, but we don't preserve the spirit or the true meaning of the precept. So therefore, silabbata paramasa means the practice of sila and tenacious grasp of such practices. So sila is good thing, but silabbata paramasa. Paramasa means paramasati, means you grasp it. You grasp it as your own. Doing certain things in a very stubborn, dogmatic manner. Now, that type of behavior is not encouraged in the teaching of the Buddha. So, what is ultimately important is, you to be behaving correctly, but exactly and each and every minute detail has to be observed according to the situation, okay? Because there can be certain things depending on, the more important thing is the meaning of the precept. Sometimes we see even in the Vinaya literature, we find that, there are ways people do things just to avoid being guilty, right? But then you get the thing done, then which is not very good. Sometimes, you want some fruits to be plucked from a tree, but for a Upasampada monk, you can't pluck it yourself. And also you can't say to another person to do that. But, very often we find a way to do it, right? So, that means we preserve the letter of the precept, but not the meaning of the precept, okay? So, this letter and the meaning of the precept are very important in the Buddhist tradition. That's why in the second point, similar manner, there is a distinction between being with sila, silava, but being made of sila, silamaya. Buddha says, you have to be silava, but not silamayo. Silava means the person with virtues, person with sila. But when you say silamaya, made of sila, that means you, in simple language, you make a big deal out of your sila. You should not make a big deal out of your sila. Of course, you are silava, but don't pretend to be silava. Don't show it off. to the society. Be very simple manner. For example, you can be having practicing certain good things, but you must not show off. So Silamaya means showing off something to the society. Okay. So the Buddha says that Silava is the good thing. You have to be Sila, but not Silamaya. And then the last thing is the point I mentioned to you. So ultimately Sila Samadhi Panya have to be understood as Sila, Sila plus Samadhi, and Sila plus Samadhi plus Panya. Because ultimately when you come to the level of Panya, you have Sila, Samadhi and Panya, all three. Okay, I think I will wind up this discussion from this point. So basically what I try to discuss with you is how the concept of Sila has been understood in the discourses. In my next discussion on Buddhist ethics, I will be looking at how the Sila has been described in the Visuddhimagga. Okay. So I will wind up for the discussion today. I will open the floor for any questions or any comments you have. Yeah. Do you have any questions or any comments? I can see that there is no disagreement about Sila, because that is a familiar subject to you. So okay. So if there are no, oh yes, go ahead. At least there is one question. That's good. Which one? Dana? Yes, yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, yes.
It is very good to do giving to God, such as prepare or leader person. Because the Buddha laid out, we are so I want to know so that concerning with the giving to other environment, such as food or drinks, etc.
So your question is, how can the Buddhist monk can practice it, who doesn't have many things?
Yeah.
Okay, that's an important question actually too. Yeah, Reverend, thank you so for that question. So his question is because usually Buddhist monks and nuns are not supposed to have too many things. So how can you really give, like giving? In fact, in the practice of Gahatta and Pabbajita, lay people and renounced people, there is a difference. The difference is, for the monastic, of course, you don't earn, you don't accumulate, so you cannot really give like lay people. But on the other hand, the monastic community can do two things, basically giving up, because they have come to the monastic life giving up. Actually, so their very life is an example of very high level of dana, parichaga. That's one aspect. The other thing is, as we know in the practice, monastic monks also receive things. Like the Sangika system is, you send everything you receive to the common storage and you get whatever you need. I think that is dana. Because otherwise you can accumulate those things, right? But you don't accumulate. Either you give away to people or some needy monks, or you just send your things to the common storage. So that is the Sangika. Now that very act is really a giving and giving up for the monks. So the giving and giving up for, particularly the giving for monks and lay people are two different ways. So the lay people, they earn and they give. For the monastic community, they also receive a lot of things. And then, so they can give up these things and also they can give those things to the other people. And sending those things to the common storage also can be interpreted as dana. So, there are ways to practice. But my main point is like when you become a Buddhist monk or nun, you are already done parichaga, giving up, something. Okay? Okay, time is sort of close in passing, so we will wind up for today's discussion, and 2:30 we will meet for the other session. Okay, thank you.